From the world's largest ice cream sundae to the largest megachurch in America, Pastor Tommy Barnett's ministry has been characterized with miracles and blessings.
Tommy Barnett answered the call of God and left what had become America's fastest growing church, Westside Assembly of God in Davenport, Iowa, to come to Phoenix, Arizona. Pastor Tommy came determined to transform this congregation into a great soul-winning machine, just as he had done in Davenport. Only 3 weeks after arriving at Phoenix First Assembly on 3rd Street, Pastor Tommy rallied a choir and built a singing Christmas tree. The church grew quickly, growing from about 76 to over 800 in the first month, and remarkably, more than 2,000 in just a few short months. Buses were purchased, ministries were sprouting up, the unsaved were invited and found Christ.
I held a meeting when I was pastoring in Davenport, my first little church there, and Johnny Cash came to that meeting. And somewhere along that time, he found the Lord. And so Johnny Cash came to my city to have a concert. And after it was over, I went back and I said to the guard, "Would you tell Mr. Cash there's a Tommy Barnett out here to meet him?" I'd met him before. And he was right behind the curtain. I didn't know it. He said, "Send the Reverend in." And I went in and I said, "Johnny Cash, I've got a dream. What if you would come to Davenport, Iowa, and you would put on a gospel concert, and you would sing and I would preach, and we would call it the world's greatest Sunday school?" He said, "Reverend, I'll do it."
Wow.
And Johnny Cash came, and we rented John O'Donnell Stadium, and over 30,000 people, the largest crowd in the history of the city. And while Johnny Cash sang, come home, it's supper time," over 6,000 people walked forward to accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. I didn't know how, when I invited him, we could ever afford it.
Yeah.
Because Johnny Cash's fee was $100,000. I saved up, put money that we could for it. And when he came, I said, "I've got a check to give you." And he said, "Before you give it, no, Pastor, I'm not going to take a thing." He brought his entire entourage. He brought 2 semi-trucks, the PA system, paid all of his expenses, and didn't charge me. But if I had not said, what if we at least invite him? We'd have never had that great moment. And today, in the history of the annals, they report that a great revival broke at the Little Westside Assembly of God Church that changed the city.
That is so amazing.
That's awesome. Well, today I have with me one of the generals of the Christian faith, Tommy Barnett. He is the co-founder of the Dream Center as well as the global pastor of Dream City Church, and he's also my grandfather. I'm so glad you're here today.
Aubrey, such a joy to be here, especially with my granddaughter that I'm so proud of, that God is using in such a wonderful way. This is a highlight for me.
Well, thank you. This is a highlight for me because as I was growing up, I didn't quite understand your story like I do today. And now I get to ask you firsthand about some of your ministry career.
Good.
So I want to know, what made you start ministry at just 16 years old?
Well, you know, they say some things are taught and some things are caught. My dad was a minister, and he was quite an innovative man. He got the idea of buying a bus and picking up kids, and he became the father of the bus ministry. At one time, he had 10 buses. So when I went to my first church, I decided that I was going to reach out to people. You see, I always believed that the important thing is that Jesus came to seek and to save that which was lost. And there was nothing more important than that. So I watched my dad preach and give invitations and altar calls. I went with him to the hospital. I ran buses, picked up little children, and it got in my heart. I thought maybe someday I could do the same thing. I could reach out to people that need Jesus Christ. So when I went to my first church, I did exactly what my dad did. I kind of had a secondhand revelation. It came from God to my dad and down to me. Now later, I would get it firsthand when God spoke to me. But the firsthand revelation, I built my church in Phoenix on that, and the church in Davenport, Iowa. So we began to reach out. It was a little church of 76 people, and we began to run buses. And soon we had 47 buses, bringing 3,000 children to church. And soon it was one of the first mega churches, literally, in the world. And God began to bless it. We built 4 churches in 4 years. We just kept expanding. God used it in a great way. I learned one time that the method was not sacred. The message is what was sacred. So I did a lot of innovative things, the bus ministry being one of them. I began to have illustrated sermons and special days. We had a Stand Up for America Day in which we invited the armed forces to come to our church. We had another day that we called the world's biggest popsicle for the kids, a 6,000-pound popsicles. We had 2 4x4s for the popsicle sticks. But we were seeing multitudes saved. People that wouldn't go to church, they came because of these innovative things. But the only reason we did them was to get them there so they could get the message and be saved. And we do that today right here at Dream City Church. We have a pageant in which we have some 50,000 people that come at 17 performances, and we give an altar call. And we'll have as many as 3,000 people tonight to raise their hand that they want to accept Jesus Christ. It was the message that was sacred and not the method. And then, of course, one day I got an idea. I went to preach for Jimmy Snow, which was the famous Hank Snow's son, who was a minister. During that meeting, a famous man walked in the building one night. His name was Johnny Cash. At the end of the service, I had a chat with him. He said, I've been thinking over very seriously about what you preached that night. I preached about what should it profit a man if he gained the world and loses his soul. Well, later, a few days later, he came back to church. And when the pastor gave the altar call, he came forward. So he came to Davenport, Iowa, and did a concert. I went to the concert, and after the concert, I went to him. And I said, Johnny, I've got a dream. I'd like to have the world's greatest Sunday school. We can rent this baseball stadium. If you'll come and sing, let me preach. I believe we can have the world's greatest Sunday school. You know what he said? I'll do it, preacher. And he came and brought his band and brought his family with him, brought June Carter, all the great, he called them the caravan that traveled with him. And that day I preached and he sang, and at the invitation to accept Jesus Christ, over 6,000 people out of that 30,000 people that were in the audience came forward, accepted Jesus Christ. It was like a Billy Graham crusade, and I'd never seen anything like it in my life. So we learned something. We learned, first of all, we got to get people to the house of God, and then we give them the message of Jesus Christ and his saving power.
Well, one of the coolest things is that you're actually in Johnny Cash's song.
Well, he became a friend after that meeting, and he wrote a song about the great mega preachers, Billy Graham, Oral Roberts, and so forth. And he talked about the great super preachers that were often criticized. And then in the chorus went like this: "Oh, Billy Sunday is dead and gone, but young Tommy Barnett is coming on strong." And I was just a young man there. And so I was very surprised when he sent me that recording. And what a nice honor.
That had to be a really cool moment for you. Well, Grandpa, one of your biggest ministry statements you've ever made, and it has stuck all over the world, was find a need and fill it, find a hurt and heal it. And the next segment of your life has a huge part to do with that statement. Yes. Let's check that out.